Hello and welcome to the Bucket Lister podcast. Join your host Keith Crockford along with special guests who have travelled the world, here to share stories of their adventures and plenty of inspo to add to your bucket list. Now, let's get into today's episode.
Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. I am your host Keith Crockford and today I'm chatting with Caroline James. Hello Caroline.
Hello Keith.
Just to give you a little bit of a background on Caroline, I have known Caroline for a very, very long time. And actually when I first set up Rockin' Rapid Adventures where are we now? Probably nearly 18 years ago, something like that. Caroline's school was one of my first ever clients for a school residential. And she was a teacher in the school. And Caroline's school kept coming back year after year after year for a considerable number of years until Caroline gave me the sad news that she was retiring from teaching. And that we wouldn't see Caroline on a residential anymore. And then, to my dismay, at one point, I was sat in my office when a booking came through for a bucket list trip to Tanzania to do a cycle ride. And the name on it was Caroline James. And you thought, well, you've missed Keith. So you thought I better continue and go on trips with him slightly further afield. And then that's what you've kind of been doing ever since, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I mean, you sparked on that Rock and Rapids. I remember you mentioning Kilimanjaro, and that sparked my kind of, putting Kilimanjaro on the bucket list. And then equally, when I handed in my notice, with teaching, the first thing I did was actually go to the bucket list group with the view that I was going to climb Kili. And then I saw the Tanzanian bike ride and I went, well, actually, no, I quite fancy doing that. And so, that's even before I told my staff that I was retiring, it was like, I'm going to book my trip. And that was it. It was booked. And so, really chuffed.
So I've invited Caroline on to the podcast today because Caroline's been back out to Tanzania a couple of times since. And it was on that Kili cycle ride that Caroline got to visit the Amani charity. And that kind of set it off for kind of your next plan, because when she came back off the Kili cycle ride and you had seen Kilimanjaro and there it was, it kind of brought that spark back to being, actually, I do need to climb Kilimanjaro. And then you booked that when you got back. But that's not all you did, was it? You kind of decided after that visit to Amani for the first time that you were going to do something else, didn't you?
Yeah. So I volunteered on there. I applied to be an ambassador for them. So it's just doing a short-term volunteering. But you are an Amani ambassador, and part of that is raising money, which goes, it's not just a case of you apply and go out there and volunteer. Part of that is raising awareness, through sponsorship, really. So doing something crazy or something normal and raising money for the Amani people, and that goes through the Friends of Amani UK. So everything goes through them and then goes out to Amani in Tanzania. So
just explain to us then what Amani Street Kids is.
So Amani Street Kids is rescuing, as I understand it, is rescuing children, from the streets of Tanzania. So, children end up on the streets for a number of reasons. It could be through family breakdown, and that could be through the family breakdown could be because, parents have separated, or it could be that parents have passed away. HIV is a problem out there, malaria is a problem out there. It could just be, through poverty that, children just find themselves end up on the streets. And there's no one to pick those children up. Somebody has to pick those children up. And Amani, they do street work. So they'll go out into the streets of Arusha and Moshi and other cities as well. And they just, they're a contact for the street children. They've got other people that, they've got kind of like social workers going out, and they basically get to know the street children. And if the street children want somewhere to come to, they can. And so once they're in with Amani, then Amani's goal is to try and repatriate the children with their families, if that's possible. But if not, then in Moshi is the centre where the children have a home. They've got food, they've got shelter, they get an education, and it's equally looking at the long term for the children. So to provide them with an education so that they can then go out and work, once they finish their schooling. My understanding also is that, that they will support families. Once they've got children back in with their families, it isn't a case of, if they've repatriated them, well, off you go. It's repatriating them and then offering the family support. So might be helping the children with their education, or it might be, educating the families with something around the farming. There's just lots. It's very, very holistic what they do. And hopefully when they, if you get a chance to speak to Salma as well, that I've reinforced the message that they've got there. But there's just so much. It's a big thing, but a lot of it is to try and get the children off the streets, so that they're in a safe environment, try and get them back with their families. But if that's not possible, to give them a home back in Moshi at the Children's Centre and, provide them with an education. And
Amani have now been going for 24 years. 25 years is their anniversary next year. They've been around for a long time, but even since when I first went there, there's been massive changes in the facilities they've got and the support that they've been getting.
Yeah, it's certainly, I think, obviously when I went out there, COVID was just finishing, so it was all quite quiet. But then when you start to follow them on social media, and then when I went out, they've got a very good program there of, getting international support. But I think also, like when I was in Arusha, one of the things that they did was they showed me what goes on there. And, they've got the one-stop centre. They've got, they're working with other agencies. So, there's a lot of work that is going on. Yeah, like you say, whereas it started off as one place many, many years ago, they're branched out throughout Tanzania.
Yeah, obviously, we only, when we go out to Tanzania with our groups, we do give our groups the opportunity to go and do an Amani visit to the home and to the school, and just to go in, interact with the young people, to have a game of football with the young people, and we see it, only for a very short period of time, and one thing that we're doing now is, this has come part of, I always think it's really important when we're traveling the world to, not only see the best bits, but to also go and see bits like this, to kind of give a realization of what actually is happening in that country. When we were in Uganda, we went to one of the slums and we went to visit a charity over there. And it really highlighted to me, like, the difficulty in what these organizations need. And we've really done a big piece of work at the Bucket List Company now to make sure that when we are visiting these places, that we're actually taking, and because all the groups want to take something, they want to give, they want to take pencils, they want to take pens, they want to take things to try and help if they can. But when we went to Uganda, it really highlighted to me the importance of telling people exactly what it is they needed. Don't just think that's what they need. Like, here's a list of things. If you want to support them, then buy something from that list. Because I really noticed, the thing that highlighted it for me in Uganda was just like the amount of single-use plastic that we took into that country and give to those children. Like, that's not what we stand for in a sustainable world. So now we do have lists of things that we can take out and, what they actually physically need, rather than just taking out what it is you feel that they might want. They don't all need balloons. They don't, they need things to educate the children with, don't they?
Yeah. Definitely. Part of the ambassador program was, you saw the harsh reality. So I did, I went out on the streets and saw the street work. We went round, the red light district, because that's, sadly, that's where girls are trying to get, earn some money. We also went, I was just like, just went out, saw what was going on, and we went to the slums. But then when I went back to Moshi, I had an opportunity to do some, take some activities out with me. And it shocked me that I did a mindfulness colouring activity with 45 children, and they all settled down to it. But there were only 6 or 7 boxes of felt tips for them to use, one per table. And even those were kept under lock and key. And the children were absolutely awesome at sharing. It was a case of like, if I haven't got my pencil or a colour that I want, I'll wait, or I'll use a different colour. But it is, there is a lack of resources, and it is simple things that we just take for normal in a school situation. I mean, also, I went to their farm. And because, I've got a degree in agriculture, I was really interested in seeing the farm that they've got at Moshi that the children learn to work on. And they have a kind of like a bit of a teaching lesson in the classroom, and then they do some practical work. But they were, had bits of paper, but there weren't enough pens or pencils. I took about 3 or 4 pens out of my bag and just left them with the kids because, that's what it was. So it is very much about finding what they actually need. And taking it out or buying it locally. And my first trip when I was on the bike ride, when we just went for the afternoon, it was going to a local retail shop and buying things that we thought they'd need, some chalk and pencils and paper, and then took that over for the afternoon. And then also made a monetary contribution as well while we were there. It is, making sure that they get what they need, because it is very, very limited out there.
And I think, that's the other thing as well, isn't it? Is I think people have this perception of, is the money going to the right places? If I give a donation, is that money going to, support the children? But actually, they support the children in so many ways, don't they? I mean, even feeding all of those children every day, like they've got to have the money for that as well.
Yeah, they have, and that's part of their farm project, is so that they can provide, their own eggs. They've got a cow there. They want to have 4 cows, so they've got enough milk. They want to provide their own foods actually from the farm. And actually, while we were there, I think on Saturday we selected some cucumbers and tomatoes. We had them the next day in a salad, for lunch. It is very much about keeping things sustainable as well. Like you say, that it's making sure the money goes to the right place. I mean, when we were there, they were very, very upfront, making sure that we got a receipt for the money that we gave. And, they were very much, our stuff is audited. And I know when I raised my money, I checked that, that it was a charity, that my money would be going to the right place. Sama, did assure me that, she was keeping an eye on my Just Giving page. So, yeah.
But I just, I've been there a couple of times several times now. And, the highlight for me is, always the game of football out on the football pitch, which, if you imagine a football pitch in a school in the UK and you imagine the football pitch out there, it's completely different. But these children just love it. And they love the fact that you're interacting with them as well, don't they?
Yeah. When for my first visit, and also then on, the common language was football, Bob Marley, and mobile phones. You could just interact through those 3, and they, it was good game of football. They absolutely love, and they always need football nets and what have you. Cones,
bibs, I mean, the fact that they're running around on that pitch with no shoes on, kicking the football, and it's just humbling to watch it. And they love the fact that you're interacting with them and you are playing with them.
Yeah. They are very friendly, very accommodating, and they're just happy to see people over there. So that's certainly the impression that I got.
I mean, did they utilize your skills of being a teacher when you were over there? Did they, did you utilize that, or?
Well, sadly, that I was only able to be there for, like, on the ambassador bit only for 4 days, and so a day and a half of that was actually in Arusha. So my program was one of, because I'd seen Moshi 2 years previously, and that's kind of like where the children live if they can't find their families again. So as Salma, said to me, she sort of said, you've seen the happy side of Amani, in that, you've seen what it's like at the children's home. So we'll start you off in Arusha, which is where you see the safety house. It's where the children come in straight away. Took me out on the streets, took me to the slums, so that you saw the other side of where the children are coming from. And then we went back to Moshi for a graduation ceremony, and then it was the weekend, so I wasn't able to actually, interact in the classroom, which, if I got the opportunity to go back again, is something I would arrange to go more on weekdays so that I could go into the classroom. But nonetheless, they did set it up so that I could have we had an afternoon in the classroom, and so I was teaching the children a bit of English, they were teaching me a bit of Swahili, we played some maths games. Again, there weren't the resources to do it, so I had to kind of like think of my head, what can we do with a whiteboard that includes some maths games and what have you. So yeah, I think mine was more of a, they'll use you however they can. I mean, I was doing some sewing, just sewing some buttons, because all their clothes get ripped and they need to be used again. And, anything I did, did some cooking with, so like we did some salad preparation and stuff like that alongside a child. So it really is whatever your interests are. Salma will arrange that within your visit. It would have been nice done a little bit more. Unfortunately, because of the days, it didn't work out that way. But nonetheless, I still got to do some elements of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super important, as I said before, for our clients to, experience that. I mean, we always do it after the Kilimanjaro climb. And, people go to Tanzania, they want to climb Kilimanjaro. They stay in the lovely lodge, which is kind of out of the way a little bit, and think, obviously, we do go into Moshi and see the real Moshi. But I think when you go to Amani, that's the real kind of issues that are happening, which you don't really see when you do your town tour of Moshi. And I think it's just super important that if you are visiting a country, that you need to see the good and the bad. And obviously it is sad when you go to Amani, and it is emotional for people. But I think the work that they are doing and giving the opportunities that they are giving is only a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and you see happy children there. The children in Moshi are well cared for. As everyone that works there does a great job of explaining, what they do. And what was interesting actually was when I went 2 years previously, was I had a photo of a young boy. He was taking a photo with my phone and everything, and I showed it to Salma, and then she sort of said, "Oh, well, he's still here." And so he was, when I left, he was the one that presented me with, you get a little certificate when you finish your ambassador program. But he was still a happy lad. That you saw smiling faces. There were some sad faces still there, because they might have been people that have just come in, and therefore, they've still got a lot of trauma that needs to be worked through. So it's not just about education. There's a lot of counselling there as well for the children. That's what I talk about, that being that very holistic and pastoral side of things that they follow through. But yeah, it was really, really good experience, very humbling experience. And again, one of raising awareness. So, you put things on your social media and continue to support them, really.
I think that's the biggest thing with Amani, isn't it? Is that they have to want to engage with Amani. They're not forced to engage with Amani. They, if they want to stay living on the streets, that's entirely up to them, isn't it? They need to want to do it.
Yeah, definitely. And when I was when we went to Arusha and we went on the streets, as soon as, I mean, it's not like there's a van that says Amani's got over it. Somebody there, we just went in a truck. And as soon as we got out, a young child came up and he'd been on the streets for 4 weeks and said, I want to come to Amani. And that doesn't happen every single day. A lot of it is about, the workers with Amani, the social workers, just making small steps with all of the people out there. So that when children say, actually, I've had enough of the streets, I need a safer place to go, they can do it. And equally, my understanding is that, if they want to leave, they can leave. And the other thing that I experienced is with that child wanting to come in, the first thing they did was they went and found a cafe and got him some food. Then when we left, he was asleep in the back. He'd just fallen asleep in the back of the van. He was absolutely exhausted. And then he went on to the Arusha Safe House. But prior to that, they have to register him with the police, because if there is a family looking for him, they need to know where he is. And then what's happened since then, he might have been repatriated with his family, or he might have gone on to Moshi. I don't know.
So do you know how long they generally stay in the safe house for then?
I think it's either 6 weeks or 6 months. I can't remember off the top of my head. But yeah, it's whilst in the safe house, there's lots of counselling that goes on. There's obviously, a bed for them. There's education for them. So they go to class and everything. And I think whilst they're trying to repatriate them, I think there is a finite time to which they then go, they go to Moshi. I can't honestly remember whether it was 6 weeks or 6 months. It was one or other.
Well, I mean, the size of Tanzania, nothing, as we all know, nothing happens very quickly in Tanzania, does it? Their attitude is kind of, as Whitey always says, it will happen. At some point it will happen, and that's, I think, the key thing to this is, Armani are doing an amazing job at what they're doing. But, as we can, as you and I can both see, they are very much underfunded in what they need to be able to do more. And that's why we at the Bucket List Company want to be doing more to help and support them in any small way we can. Like I said, we've now got a list of things that they need in the school. And, we're hoping that, I know the other day we had a big group go out there, and, they hit Amazon before they went, and their Amazon parcels were arriving as they were ticking things off the list of what they wanted to take with them. So just those little small things make such a small difference, because as we all know, colouring pens don't last forever. They need a constant supply of colouring pens. They need a constant supply of, the amount of football those kids play. If you went and took a brand new football out there within 2 weeks' time, it would look like that football, in this country was, 10 years old. It's, they're playing with it on a stone football pitch. So it's, those little things just make such a big difference. And it's one reason why we are planning to do something next year for their 25th anniversary. And what we're planning on doing is we're going to be launching it in a few weeks' time, and that's our Kili for Kids. And we're going to be organising a Kilimanjaro trek with profits from that trip going to the Armani Centre. The trip will also be extended a little bit from our standard Kilimanjaro trips, so that it will include the chance to go and do some of the work at Armani, like Caroline has just been talking about. And we feel it's really important that we can try and support them and do something special for their 25th anniversary. And obviously the fact they're based in Moshi, the fact that they're, Kilimanjaro overlooks them, it kind of seems the right thing to do to put the two things together. And we'll be launching that trip to go out towards the end of 2026. And hopefully we can get people booked onto that Kilimanjaro trek, and at the same time you will be raising money for this amazing charity, and also at the same time get to go and see where your money's going to go and what you can do to support it. So if that interests you, then keep your eyes peeled. I think it's going to launch next month or this month. I think it's going to launch at some point next month. So keep your eyes peeled. And, if Kilimanjaro is on your bucket list and you're wanting to go and do it in 2026, then this could be the trip for you, and to include something else within it as well that, would make it a more meaningful trip for you. So, Caroline, we talked about Amani. Let's talk about your Kilimanjaro experience and also your cycle experience. Obviously, you did them both with your son.
I did.
He's done a few trips with us since then as well. He is very much like you. I'll ask you the question: which trip did you prefer?
Oh, I think probably the cycling one, and I think that was a great one to do first because you cycle from Moshi to the Ngorongoro crater, and cycling you get to really pick up all those different smells, sights, and it's you are experiencing. I feel you're experiencing an element of Tanzania just through cycling through it and meeting the people when you stop. So I think that was a really great experience. Kilimanjaro is a humbling experience. It is, like you say, once you've climbed it. Yeah, I can't really explain the feeling of having succeeded with that. It was a really, really good trip. But I'm really glad that I did the cycling one as well, because you just got a different experience. Kili can be, like you say, that could be you're at the lodge, you then do the climb, and then you visit Moshi. But when you're cycling 360 kilometers, you really get a feel for what Tanzania is like. And the added,
I think the cycling one is a complete cultural immersion, isn't it?
Yeah.
You've got the adventure element there, but you've also got a real cultural immersion within Tanzania as well on that trip.
Yeah. And seeing the wildlife as well. So we stayed in is it Tarangire? Is that how you pronounce it?
Tarangire, yeah.
Yeah, we stayed at a lodge there. We were very, very lucky that a small herd of elephants came out as we left, which meant we just had to stay there for an hour or so because you don't argue with an elephant. But it was, that just to watch the elephants was amazing. And you hear the wildlife as well, when you're staying in the lodges. So yeah, that was a really, really good experience. And also the company that you use, Asante, they are brilliant guides, excellent guides. They really look after you. Both experiences were very, very good. And I nearly didn't do Kili after doing the cycle ride because you hear about the altitude sickness. It was like, do I really?
Well, I was actually because we were out there at the same time on your Kili trip, on your cycle trip, because I was leading the Kili group and you were on the cycle trip. And you saw them all limping back in the next day, when they arrived back from their Kili trip, and you.
Yeah, they were all rushing to get a massage appointment and everything.
Yeah.
And it was, you hear the stories, but if you do your research and you're going through the altitude company, the offer you do with that's reassuring. So yeah, actually, always having Kili on my bucket list, and then I was on the fence for a bit, and actually the Amani bit drove me to stick to doing Kili again. To fulfill that on my bucket list. So it was good. But I'm really glad that I did the bike ride as well, because that is, like you say, that's a culture experience. There's some amazing things that you see on that trip just through cycling.
And I think for anyone listening that doesn't want to go and climb a mountain, but wants to do some adventure, Tanzania has so much more to offer than just Kilimanjaro in essence. And I think that's the thing. People think if I go to Tanzania, then it's about Kilimanjaro, but it does have so much more to offer. Like I always say, it kind of says, people think about, South Africa or Kenya for safaris, but Tanzania offers amazing safaris, with amazing lodges to stay in, but people still sort of, if you think about safari, you think about South Africa or you think about Kenya to go to. In kind of Tanzania, it doesn't always get a look in.
No, but I mean, we since went as a family and did the safari, and we saw the big five. You can't ask for any more, can you? You've also got Zanzibar as well, so that's a different experience. So yeah, Tanzania, and they are just so welcoming. I mean, I know when I did the Amani ambassador bit, I stayed at a local bed and breakfast, and when I went and paid my bill, I was about an hour and a half with the manager there because she just wanted to know, what is it about Tanzania, and then she was telling me lots of other bits of information, and they are just so friendly. Everybody. Just everyone we met, it was just so welcoming. You can't ask for any more, really.
Brilliant. Well, Caroline, thanks ever so much for coming on to today's episode of the podcast. It's been so interesting to hear your thoughts on Armani and your experiences. One last question for you then. What's left on Caroline James's bucket list?
Oh, there are many, but like we said, I mean, gorilla trekking's got to be one, hasn't it? I think from what I've seen and heard, then I think that's got to be one that's on my bucket list at the moment. I mean, you've all heard me talk about Uganda and gorilla trekking on this podcast, and my thoughts on it. So if that's on your bucket list, then you need to get it done. And I think if you'll have similar experiences in Uganda in terms of the friendliness of the people, and it's just an amazing country to go and visit as well. So you will definitely have a good time on that one. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in this week and listening to this week's podcast. If this has sort of given you a bit of inspiration for Kilimanjaro and also Armani, then please do keep your eyes out in the coming weeks for the launch of our Kili for Kids. And we can't wait to be back out there and support them again. I'm heading out on safari in Tanzania in September. And I'll be taking my group to Armani for a game of football and also to go and say hello. I'm going to make sure I take out a few more bibs this time because we couldn't quite work out which team was which last time. So they need some bibs this time. Anyway, thank you ever so much for listening. Thank you again, Caroline, for coming back on. I'll be back again next week with another episode. But until then, thanks for listening and goodbye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Bucket Lister podcast. Be sure to click follow to be alerted for next week's episode. For more travel inspiration, check us out at www.thebucketlistcompany.co.uk or follow us on socials. See you next time.